Yeah. All right.
Are we on?
We're live.
Okay, so this is take two, and I'm KamalaDevi,
Now I'm Michael McClure.
and we're excited today to share with you a particular practice that we've been doing now for well over a year. In fact, before COVID hit, we had done a relationship deep dive, year long mastery program. And during that program is when we came up with this tool. And so we've been using it. Uh, we've been doing modified versions for many years. And then recently we're like, it landed. This is how we do it. And it feels really good and something that we want to share with the world because it's been such a powerful tool for us.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? So we're gonna teach it to you. We're gonna model it, and take any questions that you have. But before we do that, what would you say the benefits are, or the why we do this practice?
Well, there's a couple of main ones. The obvious ones are just harmony. By being emotionally attuned, it really kind of takes away any of those, like feelings that may be under the surface that are not spoken. It brings them up to where we can, we can deal with them and then just make more harmony within the relationship. The other thing is kind of what I like about it is that emotional release is one of the ways of kind of attuning to our spiritual depth. Within shamanic work, being emotionally attuned allows the magic to start happening in the shamanic world, and that's the deeper, one for me. Yeah. That's what is exciting for me.
It's a very shared value. Like, we have a very shamanic relationship, mm-hmm. And for those of you that don't know, Michael and I've been married. This is our 20th year.
Yeah, in February.
Yeah, and it's been a wild, kinky, polytantric, exploratory laboratory for 20 years.
Definitely.
So we've had our share of big emotions to surf, to navigate. So when you're talking about harmony, it's like it's harmony through the conflict, and the conflict is sometimes resentments, it's hurts, it's misunderstandings, it's like just.
Yeah, attunement doesn't mean, just pure harmony. And harmony is, it doesn't mean that we're just in a state of happiness. There's going to be sadness, there's going to be anger, there's going to be all of the emotions, and it's normal to have those emotions. But attunement allows us to recognize what they are and really feel them, and then accept what they are, or work with them, to change those emotions if they're not appropriate, for the relationship.
Yeah, feeling them first within ourselves and then feeling them with each other. A lot of the emotions are so big that they're like, we can't hold them alone. And so part of the relational struggle is like, I'm feeling this and I want you to feel it with me. And that attunement is that feeling of like, oh, we're like a musical instrument. If somebody is vibrating a certain frequency, the other person can vibrate with them and create, harmonize, mm-hmm. to actually, even if it's like, ooh, I'm feeling this anger towards the government and the politics and stuff that's not even relational. I'm feeling this, and the other person can help you feel it, and then it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, or it's not in the shadow where it, people, they might feel that you're feeling this anger and think that it's directed at them because they don't know. But once you're attuned and can feel it, then, it can come to the surface about what it is. And so, it kind of takes us off the hook sometimes and makes the relationship flow better.
Yeah, and when we talked about the shamanism, because what does this have to do with our connection to spirit and to nature and to our bodies? The emotional body, shamanically, if you look at us being multidimensional beings in the invisible realm as well as visible, the emotional body is a really strong and powerful body that when suppressed, when not attuned to, right, when not heard, it can actually block like our power and our connection to the earth and our connection to each other. Like the emotional body is fuel really for our shamanic magic. It's the source of a lot of our power to navigate between the 3D world and the 5D world.
Yeah, and it's, the flip side of that being blocked emotionally is, being open emotionally starts to allow us to see things that we couldn't see before, shamanically. And, so emotional attunement is that tool of starting to look into, different realms and developing ourselves, evolving to a place where we can see a lot more shamanically.
Beautiful. Yeah, so I wanted to just check in before we share the actual practice, and I want to acknowledge, it looks like we have a lot of beloveds on Instagram, so I want to wave. I see, hi guys, I just binged the Showtime series. You both look great. Aw, that was 10 years ago.
So we just look older now.
Yeah, we look great. But
and my hair's shorter.
That's really sweet. And yeah, so some of you may know us from the Showtime's Polyamory, Married and Dating, but I promise our life is so much more interesting than a reality show. And I want to, just say hi on, I guess there's a little, I'll just say this up front to be more present for the practice. I'm a little insecure about the technology because I had so many technical problems, and I just want to make sure that you can see us and that we're live and streaming. So if there's anyone on Facebook that can say that we're on, that would be helpful. Great. And yeah, except I'm not seeing any response, but that's okay. I'm just going to trust in it.
Yeah.
All right. So a lot of times we do this practice when we're walking, like just as a way of connecting. Like Michael works, I work from home, he's out and about. And then when we have a pocket of time together, it's like, oh, let's connect. And one or the other might invite each other to like, do you want to do an emotional weather report? And it's a way of saying, oh yeah, let's create, a deep 15-minute, attunement practice, and we'll do it walking. But I want to assure you, if you're not in a relationship, if you're, solo poly, solo practitioner, solo, single, that you can do this with yourself. In fact, even in a partnership, or if you have lots of levels, it's super valuable to journal this inquiry. We're going to teach you 5 questions. And in that 5-step process, you just check in, you attune, and then the power of self-awareness when you get through this, it can really shift your state. So I'm going to sit really close to you.
Yeah, so we can be on both of these screens.
And so before we go into the 5-step process, is there anything else you want to say?
Yeah, you were talking about you can do it solo. A lot of times I'll feel something, like I'll feel an emotion, and let's say it's a feeling of sadness, and so what I'll do is get into feeling where's it coming from, and it's really important for me to do that. By doing that, I'm really getting attuned to my own emotions. So it's like you're saying, it's not necessarily attunement with somebody else, although that's what we're going to be talking about as well. But yeah, figuring out where those emotions are coming from. A lot of times that will release the emotions if they're not appropriate, if they're negative. So
you are probably watching this and you may be like, yeah, but I'm not in crisis, or I don't have a problem, or I don't need that. And what this gives permission to is, in every moment, all the time, we have access to all our emotions. And you don't have to be in a violent rage state to get in touch with your irritation or your frustration. Like, you don't have to be like grieving to actually touch into your grief. Like, so what what this is a permission for the whole of who you are, which is sometimes contradictory, oftentimes multiple contradictory emotions. And so by not only witnessing yourself, but another in this practice, it gives permission to our humanity. And it's a wide human study. It comes from the study of emotions, where we have distilled down. They've actually done these brain research scans where they look at where emotions live in. There's different centers in the brain. I mean, we know we have a pleasure center, right? We also have a place that lights up when we're deep in grief, and we have other place that is when we are in rage and anger, and sometimes the fear, which is deep in the base of the lizard brain. Like the fear feels really core and survival. So all these different feelings, like scientists have agreed, like there's basically these 4 human emotions, including and especially happiness, right? Like that's a whole emotion, and there's different shades of happiness, ecstasy, and joy, and pride, but it boils down to these are the essential emotions. So we're going to go over happiness, and the order is important as well, because there's orders of depth in the brain. So it starts off with the happiness, and then we're going to go into like, what are you angry about, and what are you sad about, and then what are you afraid of. And then the 5th emotion, which actually isn't talked about in Western psychology, but it is in the Eastern psychology, the cultures that are more focused on meditation and inner peace, and that's contentment. So we end the practice with what brings you contentment. What are you content about? Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to
add? Also, we may not get into it too much, but the part about the shamanic visioning with emotions, there's something to like feeling these emotions and then figuring out what they are or attuning to them. Sometimes they're actually messages that are coming from the outside, and we've had a lot of experience of like clearing emotions or feeling emotions when something's happening with each other, and those are shamanic messages that are coming in.
It's beautiful, because we are all empaths. I know some people identify as like, I'm an empath and I'm sensitive to other people's feelings. Like, we're all empaths, and we all have mirror neurons, and when we see and feel each other's facial expressions, it triggers a deep knowing in our own body. And so there is a psychic thing that can happen here. And there's also a shaman, when we've felt all of our feelings, crosses over to the tribe and starts to feel for the collective. So a lot of times, like, your grief may not be your own grief. You're just feeling like the fucking collective grief of this era that we're in. Like, we're in a really deep death initiation, and there's a lot more grieving than we can actually feel. So sometimes we feel each other's grief and help each other get through it.
Mm-hmm. And can I tell just
Sure.
a real world
Mm-hmm.
story? So we had an experience. We were in Mexico at a spa, and I was in a separate spa from KamalaDevi, and I felt this feeling of extreme dread, and I was attuned to it, and so I did a type of shamanic clearing that I've learned over the years. And when I came out, and I met her in the lobby, it turned out that she, in the other side of the spa, had stepped into a live 220 in the water, so electrical short circuit, and had almost died.
Well, I actually stepped into it. I urinated, like just peed, emptied my bladder, and passed out. And then I woke up and I was like, whoa, there's electricity in that jacuzzi. I need to go find Michael,
And I had picked that up, and I had done a clearing. And so, whether I helped save her or whether I just, got the message, there was a message that came through, and it was it was, being emotionally attuned was right on that edge of being attuned to intuition and shamanic messages as well.
It's not until you tell the story right now that I think about how the water has always been a place where you center your emotions. Like you're like always going, like Michael's spiritual practice is surfing. Like he goes to the water, he centers himself, and you were like in the water just feeling your feelings, and you had this really powerful hit. Okay, so before I go on, I'm just gonna also wanted to acknowledge that this is a story that you told that happened in the past. This was my birthday a number of years ago, many years ago. And so I know you're referring to me as she, and for those of you that don't know, my preferred pronouns are they and them. And it's obviously an ongoing upgrade because we have to remind each other.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So emotional weather report. We're just going to model it and then we'll take some questions. So what are you happy about?
I'm happy to be sharing this with you. We don't do so many things together, like this, and it feels really good to be teaching, together with you. It just feels really good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What are you angry?
Actually, start happy again.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. What are you happy about?
So I'm going to resist my urge to crosstalk and share and just kind of go into my own process. And I'm so happy about where we're at relationally. Like we both have dates tonight, and that idea of like just really genuinely being happy for each other, and that we're in such a place of ease in our connection.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
What are you angry or irritated or frustrated, but angry about?
I'm angry about Devin's. This is our son, Devin's schoolwork and his not communicating to me as clearly as I had hoped within our agreements. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What are you angry about?
This is a hard one for me to stay personal. Like I want to kind of look out at the system and out. But if I really am vulnerable about anger, I'm angry at myself. I do have some like standards of my own writing goals and my own performance that I'm kind of it's like I'm frustrated at how much integration and downtime I'm taking, and yeah, it's like a parts conflict. Of course I want to give myself the down regulation, but there's always a part of me like a dominatrix that's like, you should be writing more, and that runs me sometimes, like this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to sad. What are you grieving?
I'm sad that I haven't done all of the things that I would like within my own creative expression, I have so much to celebrate, but there's still this nagging inside of me about like not having, written the music and performed the music that I've wanted to, or been the teacher, within ISTA, or within our, poly world, or and it feels like yeah, I'm sad about that.
I hear that. Thank you.
What are you sad about?
So there is a sense of loss around time spent with Devin. We're reading a book, as you know, right now about war, and I'm so enjoying that time. And there's like a kind of it's a little bit guilt, but it's also like, oh, I could have read so much more with him, or this could have been a deeper practice, and I just can't get that time back. There's like I can give him my all in the moment, but there are lost years where I wasn't as present as I could have been.
Thank you. Yeah, I hear you.
Thanks. We are moving on to fear. Like, what underneath are you afraid of?
I have fear that I might be too much of a disciplinarian with my son, and by doing that, I might miss some of the love. So it's like I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to be a good enough parent to give him the tools that he needs to succeed in life, and at the same time be a super loving parent. So I have some fear about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What are you afraid of?
So in this moment, I think there's some fears that I don't even admit to myself around, particularly how deep and exploratory our experimentations are, like in love and in community. And there's a way in which sometimes I'll get sober and I'll be like, holy shit, like we are just, really going to the edge, sharing our love with other people and with the world. And like, I'm afraid of like, what, like it's a small part, mostly I'm courageous, but like what I feel is like, oh shit, what if, like that point of no return, like we go into some territory that there's no turning back. And as I speak it, I kind of laugh because we are at a point of no return. There is no going back. And it is very much a trust fall into what's next and what's alive. But there is still some tremoring in my being that's like, wow, what if we take these big risks or, do these big adventures and then it's like lose it all, like lose everything that we've built, that kind of fear. And it's a little irrational, but I wanted to voice it because it's like, yeah, it's part, like a lot of people see me as as courageous or fearless, and it's like, no, there's fear there. Like it's scary to go out and to love so big, because the more you love, the more you stand to lose. And so I'm afraid of losing it all.
Thank you.
Yeah. Our son just came home from school.
Hello, Devin.
All right. So that takes us through the emotional territory of the like, what's the shadow or the negative emotions. And brings us to contentment. What are you content about?
I'm really content about everything. And I know that sounds like it sounds like I'm kind of blowing the question off, but I'm really not. Like even the times when I have fear and anger and these other emotions, I feel a lot of contentment about that. And I really feel content about life. And it's kind of like, it's really kind of comes down, I'm getting older now, as we all are, but it's sort of a contentment about death. That death is inevitable, that it's coming, and I'm content about that. And yeah, that's kind of what is running in my system, like all the time, actually. Yeah.
Thank you.
What are you content about?
I'm actually really turned on by that answer. And I'm not cross-talking. I'm just, tapping into my contentment. I have a genuine sense that my needs are generously provided for. Like that sense of like there is no need, kind of a satiated, like I have wants and desires and visions, but not coming from a place of need. And I'm content to know that like not just food and shelter, but family and connection, like that, all my needs are really, really satisfied. And that that's like the definition of contentment.
Thank you. It's beautiful.
So this is like just a moment of squeeze and celebration. I feel so like seen, like really it's like this well of like digging into the well and like revealing, ooh, what does each time we go down with the bucket, what comes up, what nourishes us. It's very nourishing to do this practice. And I love that I got a question from Kalama. Hi, honey. So wondering if asking about each of these emotions evokes it when it isn't present. If so, then it's more of emotional exploration than a weather report. The difference is subtle, but seems important. It is a beautiful exploration. Like if I sat down, I wouldn't be able to say, these are all the things that I'm feeling. And it's my experience that I am feeling them all the time anyway, even without like Michael's presence. Like they're going on for me. So he's stopping to check in, or he's helping me, whether it's in my journal or his witnessing, helping me see, oh, this is what's happening underneath all the time anyway. And that's super important to just report on. It's like let me stop and check it, like shine the light of awareness inside. So you're making an important distinction between like, are we exploring new things, or is it already there? And just because I wasn't aware of it doesn't mean it wasn't already happening.
Yeah, if we're emotional beings, we have all of those emotions all the time. And it really is kind of like feeling into ourselves, about what is there that's, that may be running us all the time, even though it may not be something that we're thinking about specifically right now. It's, it's certainly something that, that is within us as emotional beings. It's just recognizing that we are emotional beings, that we do have these emotions all the time.
And what else is a gift is, Michael and I have a level of mastery in our emotions that some people who have, maybe it's anger management, or it's like their emotional home base is always like they're always happy and they can't figure out the other ones. Like we all have an emotional home base. Mine used to be grief. Like I was sad all the time. Massive depressive disorder was my diagnosis, And when Michael today, when you actually ask me, what are you sad about? I'm like, I have to come up with something to be sad about because that's just not my emotional home anymore. But the value of continuing to just housekeep, almost like emotional hygiene in each of these houses, is super valuable because then I feel more, the full emotional range is more available to me.
And I've really been exploring a lot in contentment, and that's been kind of an underlying, theme within my emotional body for the past several years. And, I've had teachers kind of question me about that, whether I'm kind of, going over the other emotions and, because I'm just focusing on the contentment. And yeah, it's a good question.
It's a good practice so that you don't go over, you're doing this practice and
I'm not bypassing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not bypassing those other emotions, just staying feeling like I'm content all the time. And not feeling the anger or the sadness or these other ones.
Yeah. And the reason we call it report, I want to say, is when you label an emotion, like if you say you're feeling fear, that label is not the emotion. Like you have to give yourself permission to actually feel it. And sometimes when you're journaling or sometimes when you're talking it through, you're not necessarily, you're reporting on what you're feeling. You're not necessarily feeling it. And, I give you permission to actually feel it more. Like Michael and I have a lot of permission to like, oh, wow, I'm feeling this anger. Like, let me get some of it out. Let me run it or let me vibrate through. So it's really important as we do this work to do it holistically, because you could do this whole exercise in your head and it actually is just running a story. And that's why we kind of slow down, take those breaths. We did a pretty quick version for you today, but normally it's like giving permission to feel and to feel with each other more. Yeah. Okay, so I want to check to see, hold that for a second. I want to see if there's other questions, but I did want to wrap back around to Kalama, who says part of what informed her question was that she heard the Dalai Lama say to someone who was asking about how to manage anger, don't get angry.
What I think the Dalai Lama is saying there is to stay in a beautiful state despite what your emotions are doing. And so, it's kind of unrealistic to say don't get angry if it's a normal emotion, or don't get sad, or don't get, whatever it is. But staying in a beautiful state despite having these things. And there can be people who are, anger runs them, they have rage or whatever that is. And that's, definitely something to work on. But
the how to work on it is just that, like, yes, there's anger there. And I can choose knowing that, yes, there's also contentment, or yes, there's happiness. There's something I'm happy about, something simultaneously always. Where am I going to put my attention? Well, let's not fuel the fire of anger when we could water, this, other plant of contentment.
Yeah.
Okay, so I saw another question, but I'm afraid it's probably another polyamory question. Do you want to read Rebecca's question?
Have y'all ever had a lover or relationship that seriously tested your marriage? And if so, how did you work through it? Yeah, I guess do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I was joking when I said, oh no, it's a polyamory question. Obviously whether you're single or monogamous or polyamorous, like, we want to share our heart and what's authentic, and you could have another lover, regardless of what love style, you could still have, other lover. Jealousy, monogamous people get jealous too.
Yeah, and jealousy, since we're talking about emotions and emotional weather report, jealousy is not an emotion. But it consists of a lot of emotions. A lot of things can come up within it, but it also has its own kind of, it's its own kind of thing. It's a deep emotional. I look at it as almost like a shamanic message that's coming to us when we have jealousy, that when we can go down and do the weather report, like when we're in jealousy, if we can do the weather report, figure out what the emotions are, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever, if we can follow down those channels and figure out what the emotions are, it's a huge lesson for us in our growth, to figure out what we're feeling and why.
And why usually tells us what we're wanting, right? So
needing, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll give you the example of, this is such a fantastic link, because today we chose to be like, hey, it's a general introduction. We'll do it in general in the moment. We didn't plan, but when I do relationship coaching, I say, do this. What are you happy about in our relationship? What are you angry about in our relationship? What are you sad about in our relationship? What are you afraid of in our relationship? And then what are you content about in our relationship? And that's where the rubber hits the road. Like it's really to hold for your partner having all those feelings about you is really advanced. So I wasn't quite ready to go there, although I think we probably could have done that.
Well, and it's like that question that you hear, you put in bed at the end of it.
Yeah,
so what are you happy about in bed?
And it's a fortune cookie. What's your fortune cookie?
Yeah, what are you sad about in bed? It's deep. It's
a
deep practice. Yeah. It brings up things that you never expect, and it's not a joke, to be able to do those and to run it like that, in relationship or in bed or in your sexuality. Or
so let's say I'm gonna use Rachel because I just talked about it. Like the person who tested our partnership the most was when we lived for a year and a half or longer, but with Rachel Rickards. Hi, Rachel. And in that case, like in that practice, Rachel could even be in our process, but the practice was often like, okay, what are you angry about? And in this case, it might have been, well, the two of you run at a pace that's a lot more similar, and I feel left behind. I'm angry about that. What are you sad about? And it's like, oh, I'm sad that you weren't with me on this day because you were away with her on a vacation. Or what are you afraid of? Well, I'm afraid that that you're more sexually compatible with her and you'd rather be with her than me. Like these are the kinds of exploratory things that will shine a light on why like jealousy is so complex, and untangle the knot of jealousy is, oh, underneath that there is something you're angry about, you're insecure about, you're also sad about. And then once those things are felt by your beloved, you feel like, okay, cool, I'm not going crazy. They hear me and they're attuning to me now. And this is a revelation. I want to say this like loud and proud, that most recently in the last 2 years of our poly partnership, we have not been making relationship agreements, like rules. We've instead said, instead of agreements, we're upgrading to attunement. And what that means is, if you just feel me, if you feel what I feel, then you move with your other partners in accordance of like, oh, I'm considering my partner, I'm feeling them, and I'm acting in a way that feels like it's considering them. And then I don't need all the rules or all the specific agreements because I'm actually feeling my partner. So attunement is more powerful than agreements.
It's kind of like an overrule.
Yeah.
It's like we say in attunement, we're listening, and it's not a simple thing,
It's very advanced.
And yeah, and you could say that we do have our rules in our agreements that have always been there, and we don't, we're not really like testing those and breaking those.
And the agreements, for example, like a condom commitment, like if we have that agreement, it comes from the attunement. Like, oh, because I know that my beloved is afraid of me getting pregnant from, like I don't want to activate his fear, so I practice with condom. Like there's a deep sense of, I know this rule isn't arbitrary. It comes from a fear in his emotional body that I want to attune to, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and having the needs and the feelings of them is are my needs and feelings, within the relationship. The relationship becomes it becomes an entity of its own.
Yeah. And you get married. I'm married not only to my beloved, but I'm married to his needs and feelings as well as his wounding. And I'm married to the whole emotional body. And not just like all the bodies. As a shaman, he has so many dimensional bodies, and I'm married to all of it.
And which brings us back to that shamanic part, which is the attunement. When we have that attunement, it makes it possible for us to do some shamanic journeying within our relationship. And I'm a huge believer now that some of the deepest spiritual growth happens in long-term relationship, where we're learning how to attune with someone. I really didn't believe that our first 10 years, but then we went through a lot of just a lot of growth that really made it apparent that it is the truth, that is a truth, that we can just go to such deep spiritual places by being in a relationship. So it's such a deep, long-term relationship.
I love sharing about our relationship, and I want to share more, but I'm getting the message that we're running out of batteries. And so I just wanted to, maybe have you answer the final question, and then we'll wrap it up for now. And if you if you like this and you want more, we'll do another live stream in the new year.
So the question is, have we always been poly, or was that a decision that we made together, or were we poly before we met each other? And the answer is, we were both poly before we met each other, and it made it a lot easier. However, what it brings up for me, our marriage was more of a spiritual marriage, like a shamanic marriage. There were some shamanic messages that came in by being emotionally attuned, that brought them to me. And when that happened, it was work that I was doing where I was attuned to my own, to myself, and I was able to see them when they came into my life, and it was also messages that took me to being poly. So I became poly a few years before I met KamalaDevi, and when I first met her, I thought that because she was poly, that's what was attracting me to KamalaDevi, but it wasn't that. It was actually the attunement. That our souls were attuned. Both of us had some attunement already, and we were able to see that, and we were able to connect because of that. So it wasn't so much the poly thing. I figured that out. It took about 15 years for me to start seeing that.
The soul contract that we have, like, yes, poly's a huge part of our lifestyle, but it's about the love, not the openness. It's about, there's a deeper force that is moving through our souls that brought us together. I would agree with that. And it's beautiful that we've gotten to share this poly path together and explore and keep experimenting. And we have to keep putting love in the center, not polyamory, not, shamanism, not, it's like love is at the center, and then the other, ways of, and like the other forms that it takes are all just expressions of love.
When you get down to it, the attunement is attunement to love. When you really, there isn't anything else. That is the center of the, of the universe. So.
We've got all kinds of acknowledgments, and I'm just going to thank and bless everyone who joined us today. And we look forward to connecting more. Feel free to send us other questions.
Happy holidays, and so much love for all of you, and
let us know. Try the emotional weather report out, and let us know your results. We look forward to hearing about it. Just a second. Looks like they